What's up, everybody? GeauxBurns climbing back upon Mount. Wait, I don't have a rant today? Oh, we're going to do that next week? Okay. Sorry, no rant today. But if you have a rant suggestion for next Sunday when we bring back the rant series, feel free to either leave it below in the comments section, Twitter, or Facebook me. We're going to be doing a review of Mafia 3 because obviously I'm officially done with my Mafia 3 Let's Play. All 16 episodes worth in the Mafia 3 playlist. So, we're going to go over the pros, the cons, and then I'm going to rate Mafia 3. Now, I don't always do video game reviews, but if you're interested in someone who does a really good job of reviewing games, whether they're AAA or indie, check out my friend Carrick's channel, ACG. I'm also a member of the International Podcast, so if you'd like to see me over there with Carrick, Silver, and Reg, every now and then I babble a little bit in those videos talking about this and that. Feel free and check out the International Podcast, as well as all of Carrick's reviews, because he's one of the best reviewers out there when it comes to video games. But every now and then I like to do a review as well, and usually, most of the time, all the time actually, it's revolved around a game I actually played, like Mafia 3. So we are going to review Mafia 3 right now. Going into the pros. Obviously, with the tradition of the Mafia games, we have great characters and fantastic story. And Mafia 3 does not disappoint when it comes to story and characters, just like with Mafia 2 and just like with the original Mafia game. So right there, it's in good company for the entire Mafia franchise. I mean, I love Lincoln Clay as a protagonist. He has several great supporting characters in Donovan, his friend, and of course CIA handler from Vietnam. He's like the devil on one side of his shoulder, and then on the other side you have Father James, and the underbosses are each unique and very individual. You may like one more than the others. You may like 2 out of 3 of them, or you may hate all 3 of your underbosses, but I definitely loathe the enemy. I hate Sal Marcano. I absolutely despise Georgie. And that is a good thing, because in a game, in a book, in a movie, you want to love certain characters and you want to absolutely hate other characters. And Bill Harms and his writing team at Mafia 3 nailed it when it came to most of the characters in Mafia 3, along with the story. And yes, I am going to mention some spoilers. Maybe not complete spoilers, but a little bit here and there. Now, one thing I'm really happy about is the fact they didn't go the cliche route with Lincoln Clay. And what I mean is, he is an orphan. We don't know who his mom and dad are. So that was not answered in this game. And I'm glad it wasn't answered, because that seems like the cliche thing that you see in movies and TV shows, etc. A lot of people wanted his dad to be Joe or Vito or Sal or somebody. And I'm glad we'll hopefully never find out who Lincoln Clay's biological father was, or his mother. We don't need that answer. As somebody whose mom was an orphan and was adopted, she never knew who her parents were, and that mystery is lost forever. And the same thing should be for Lincoln. It's part of his character, longing to belong to something. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Sammy and Father James are both like paternal figures to Lincoln Clay. So that's really what matters here. But you definitely have this little thing going back and forth between Donovan and Father James, trying to be the moral compass for Lincoln Clay. Meanwhile, Donovan is steering him towards revenge against the Marcano crime family. Now, the other pros I'd like to talk about is the location and settings. Now, obviously, Mafia 3 is set in late 1968 during a civil rights movement, counterculture, the Vietnam War. Absolutely nailed all 3 when it comes to the setting of Mafia 3 and the location itself. And this is someone who's been in New Orleans a few times, at least 2 or 3 times. They basically nailed New Orleans in New Bordeaux. Now, I realize New Bordeaux is not exactly like New Orleans. There are some differences. For example, as far as we know, there's no canals underneath the city. They may keep that a secret from us. But the bayou isn't exactly like right up to the city. But they got the bayou pretty much right. They got the city for the most part correct. So definitely, I think they nailed it pretty on the head when it comes to New Bordeaux. It's a beautiful city, And each district is very distinct and unique. Like the French Ward is a lot of fun. There's a lot of rich hoity-toity people up in, let's see, Frisco Fields. You know, it's really like crimey and dirty and poor down in River Row. And it's wild and crazy in the bayou. And I love that. I love how each district has a different feel to it. So definitely they did an excellent job when it comes to the settings and the location for Mafia 3. And then, of course, let's talk about the brutal takedowns. One of my favorite things to do is Lincoln Clay. Well, there's another thing I like to do. We'll talk about that in a minute. And you just sneak up on somebody, you knife them, or you break their neck, or you knock them to the ground, you stomp their head in. It's just, those brutal takedowns are freaking fierce. Absolutely love them. Along with all the various weapons and upgrades, I definitely like the system, especially the ability to, call in Jackie and have him bring you the weapons, whether you want ammo or you want to do a weapons upgrade or you want to switch weapons or you want some explosives or you need some supplies or you want to do some upgrading to your vehicle or to Lincoln. I love having that wrapped up into one easy delivery package. And back to the weapons. Now, some people complain about the fact that you can only technically have 2 firearms on you at a time. Usually a pistol and something else like a rifle or a machine gun or a shotgun, etc. But I personally like this because it forces you to decide what weapons you're taking into battle. Do you want a silencer? Or do you want a revolver? Do you want, what is it? What do they call it? The Hartman 30 caliber, which was the rifle I used in the game. Or do you want a Tommy gun? Or do you want, something with a little bit more kick to it, like a shotgun or a rocket launcher? I like the ability to where you have to go in with these weapons. You can't have this infinite weapon wheel like, most of us are spoiled and used to with games like Grand Theft Auto 5 and Red Dead Redemption, etc. I think it sets it apart from Grand Theft Auto and other open world games. I personally like it. Now, you may disagree with me. Feel free to do so in the comment section. And by the way, if there's any pros or cons that I left off that you think I should have included in this review, feel free and leave that below as well. Continuing, let's talk about the underbosses. We mentioned, one of Cassandra's abilities, but they're very well balanced in my opinion, as opposed to what they offer. And, you may like one character over the other two, but I feel like what they offer Lincoln encourages you to try and balance out the districts in order to keep them around, keep them happy. And with Vito, of course, my personal favorite, obviously, he has several cool options for you. The Consigliere, which comes and takes your money. Eventually, you upgrade the Consigliere to where not only does she take your money, she also takes all the kickbacks from your underbosses, so you don't have to go pick up the money in River Row, Delray Hollow, or all the way up in Point Verdun. And of course, Vito also offers the Mob Doctor, the Hit Squad, which can come in very handy in some very tight situations, especially if you get the Hit Squad upgraded to where they're coming in with shotguns and automatic rifles, and they're like really, really badass. And of course, Cassandra, she does the guns obviously with Jackie, along with the ability to cut the phone lines and the Zimmy doll, which is really good for distracting foes. Then, of course, Burke, he does the vehicle delivery service and the ability to call off guards. And, of course, explosives, because who doesn't like explosives in an open world game? So, yes, I feel like that the underbosses were balanced really well when it came to the things that they offered you, kind of forcing you not to play favorites, even though that is encouraged. You can do so. You can piss them off if you want to, or you can try and go even Steven like I did in my Mafia 3 Let's Play. And I like the fact that the sit-downs are another really big pro, in my opinion. The ability to sit down, weigh in on who you're going to give this district to or that district to. And before that, the rackets, because you have to go into each racket, because there's usually 2 rackets per district, and you have to hand them over to one of your underbosses. And if you're not smart, if you don't say, okay, I'm giving this district over to Cassandra, so I better give the rackets over to her as well, you could cause some issue by giving her a racket and giving Vito another racket and then having to pick between one of those two to give the district to because they also take the rackets, or you piss them both off by giving it over to Burke. It adds a little bit of complication, a little bit of a strategy when it comes to the sit-downs and how you're going to divvy out the districts in the game. So I definitely like that. The other thing I enjoy is no failure but death. That's kind of Hangar 13's motto when it comes to going into these missions. You can either go in silent, sneaky, stealthy, stabbing, brutal takedowning as many people as you can, or you can go in guns blazing, you can call in a hit squad, or all of the above. So I definitely love having the option to go in from different angles and try different strategies, whether it's sniping or using a silent pistol or going in with grenades and rockets, etc. And of course, there's plenty of collectibles as well. For everybody that loves collectibles, we got Playboys, pinups, religious magazines, albums, hot rod magazines, and of course, communist posters, because it is the Cold War, the late 60s, and all that stuff. And then a few other pros. I'm almost done with the pros, by the way. I know there's a lot of pros, but we also got a lot of cons to go over. The music, definitely. You can't have the setting of the 1960s without all the awesome music that was during that time period. So Hangar 13 did a fantastic job with their music selection. They have some great artists from the time. Most of them are still iconic today, like Rolling Stones, Johnny Cash, and several others as well. And then another pro, alligators. This is the other thing I love doing in this game, besides using the boats and swimming. Yes, we can actually swim now in the game. We can't dive or anything, but at least you can swim instead of having to... I mean, it'd be kind of cool if you could dive into the water and swim down and find treasure and stuff, but it's okay. It's better than, falling into the water and having instant death, unless, an alligator's nearby and they may try to have you for breakfast. But speaking of alligators, that's one thing I enjoy doing. You kill some foes that happen to be in the bayou, or you happen to be by like a body of water like Lake Pontchartrain or the Mississippi River. You can just pick up the body, walk it over to the edge of the water, dump it in, and watch the meal happen. Watch the gators have some dinner or some lunch or brunch or whatever. It never gets old. I love watching that. And of course, the final pro I'm going to include is the return of Vito from Mafia 2. And most Mafia fans absolutely love Vito. And I remember when the reveal trailer came out a year ago, and obviously a lot of things changed from the reveal trailer, but one thing that really sold me on Mafia 3 from the very beginning was the inclusion of Vito. Even though he looked a little bit different in the reveal trailer, aka Silver Fox Vito, I was very happy to have Vito in Mafia 3. And I like the fact that the same voice actor has come back to voice him again in Mafia 3, who voiced him in Mafia 2. So that definitely adds connectivity between the events of Mafia 2 and Mafia 3. So there's definitely a buildup of the Mafia-verse when it comes to adding Vito and a couple other characters as well that were in Mafia 2. Now let's move over to the cons, because yes, I do have some cons. And like I said, if you have any pros or cons that I didn't include, feel free and leave them below in the comment section. The first con is something a lot of you have been complaining about, and I agree entirely. Lack of multiple save files. You only have one save file? That's all we get, Hangar 13? Seriously? In this day and age, we need at least, like a couple. 2, 3, 5. Especially with the fact that you have replayability going on. Because you can play at one time going even Steven with a different ending. We'll talk about endings in a moment. Then you could decide, you know what, screw all you. I'm going with Vito. I'm going with Burke. I'm going with Cassandra. But maybe you want the ability to go back into different save files and, say, okay, I'm going to go and play around with this save file with Vito or even Steven, or etc. So I really wish they would have had multiple save files instead of one. It really doesn't make sense, especially on current gen consoles like the Xbox One and PlayStation 4. It just does not make sense. And the other con I have is rear view mirrors. Now, when I first saw the gameplay of Mafia 3, I had some minor issues with it, and I figured, this is early video. They'll probably improve a lot of it, so I wasn't really worried about it. But the first time I saw them driving around in a car and I saw that rear view mirror, I'm like, God, please let us have the ability to remove that rear view mirror. And I feel the exact same way now. So I really wish that I could take the rear view mirror off. And if there's a way to do it, please let me know, because I've tried everything to take that damn thing off. And the fact is that in the rear view mirror, yes, you see some of the vehicles behind you, but graphically, it's like inferior to the graphics in the game. And that's probably by design. But as somebody that plays online open world games like Grand Theft Auto Online, I don't need the damn rear view mirror, okay? It's just a nuisance. It's annoying. I'd rather just pull it down. And the only time I ever see a rear view mirror in like Grand Theft Auto Online is when I'm in first person. And obviously Mafia 3 is only a third person game. So I really wish that there was a way and a means to pull down the bloody rear view mirror. It sucks. Okay, so speaking of rear view mirrors and vehicles, my next con is revolved around the cars. Now, there's some really awesome cars in Mafia 3, and you even get to have some courtesy of Burke and the car delivery system. But the problem is it's very, very limited, and I was expecting a lot more options in this capacity. Now, if you include the 3 cars from the kickback pre-order bonus, you can have a grand total of up to 9 cars eventually, because you do have to unlock a couple of them. So up to 9 cars you can unlock and you can upgrade. The cool thing is when you upgrade one vehicle, it upgrades the entire fleet. And some of the upgrades have kind of issues too, especially the aesthetics of some. And you're like, you know what? I don't really want those pipes on my muscle car. I wish I could just take the pipes off and just have the upgrade. The sound of the really cool looking sports car that belonged to Frank and Tickfall Harbor, when you upgrade that with the supercharger, it has this annoying dental drill sound to it that I really wish wasn't there. It's not there before you get the upgrade as far as I remember, but I just wish that was not there either, because it gets annoying. And you probably know what I'm talking about. So I really wish that we had more than 9 cars. And further than that, I wish they would have simply done what they did with Mafia 2. I mean, I still like the delivery system. I think that's awesome. But I wish we would have had a garage instead, with the ability to steal almost any car in the game and go to a garage, well, you know, a custom shop, and upgrade them. You know, whatever paint job we want, whatever engines, wheels, etc., license plates. That was in Mafia 2, but it's not in Mafia 3. But I just have to, you know, put a little hyphen here, a little asterisk. We do have a free update coming concerning vehicle customization. So I don't know what level or degree of vehicle customization it will entail. Maybe Hangar 13 will make it to where we can do this with almost any vehicle in the game, and I sincerely hope so, because I'm sorry, there's a lot of cars that are, you know, driving around New Bordeaux that I want to steal, customize, and keep that I currently don't have access to in the vehicle delivery system. The next con is basically this: no castle for the king. After Lincoln Clay recovers from being nearly killed by Sal Marcano and Georgie, all he has left is the burnt out Sammy's bar, the basement where a bed is. You don't even get to sleep in the bed, by the way, but there's his safe. So until you get the consigliere, you always have to go back to the burnt out Sammy's bar in order to store your money, in the hopes that you still have money before you get killed and you lose half your money that was in your wallet. I wish that once you got all 3 of the underbosses and you did your first sit down, that the mansion would become Lincoln Clay's new pad, his mansion, his castle. You know, because what mob boss doesn't have a badass home? As you go further into the game, conquering district after district, I very much would like to see that awesome mansion in the bayou get upgraded. It would start looking a little bit nicer, cleaner, prettier. Renovations are happening. Maybe you would even see underboss bodyguards, you know, patrolling the perimeter, keeping it safe from any attacks. And you could also have like a trophy room for collectibles. And after you defeat each racket or district boss, you get a little, I guess, souvenir or trophy in another room that you can go and say, oh, well, there's Olivia Marcano's necklace. You know, that lets you know that you defeated Olivia Marcano. Or another one, Tony's glasses, for example. It would just be really cool if we actually had a castle for the king. And unfortunately, at the moment, we don't in Mafia 3. And I think it's a missed opportunity. Especially since, why would Lincoln Clay have all his money stored in the safe in a burnt out bar? It just doesn't really make much sense. The next con is the missions can feel a bit repetitive. However, despite the fact they do feel repetitive, I have to say this, that this is unfortunately a factor you see in a lot of games. So it's not really a big con in my opinion. Some other cons. Speaking of what I was talking about a moment ago regarding the safe at Sammy's, before you get the consigliere, as I said, you have to travel back and forth to put the money in the safe. I really wish that there was some fast travel in Mafia 3, and I'm not the only one that has said this. Now, it doesn't have to be fast travel anywhere. It can be specific spots, like Sammy's bar. It can be down at the various rackets that you've taken over, Underboss's headquarters, like Cassandra's, Vito's, Burke's, like that, you know, where you could like quick, like fast travel from Delray Hollow over to Burke's junkyard up in Point Verdun without having to drive all the way up there, because there were several missions where I was in one district and I had to drive all the way back to Delray Hollow just to have a conversation with Donovan, which was ridiculous because Donovan has a big blue truck that he comes to you in several of the other missions. So the first time you see Donovan, you drive over there, talk to him, and perhaps even the very next mission with Donovan, he's coming to you. And it would make more sense if we had the ability just to fast travel from Point Verdun or from Frisco Fields back to the hotel and then have our conversation with Donovan instead of taking all this time to drive over there. I mean, I love driving around New Bordeaux, but sometimes it does get a little tedious. Now, another con I have, speaking of cities, is cities themselves in the Mafiaverse. Now, we know about New Bordeaux is, for the most part, based on New Orleans, but there's 2 other cities. For example, Empire Bay. For the most part, it's based on New York City. Then there's another city, Lost Heaven from the original Mafia game. For the most part, it's based on the 1920s, 1930s Chicago. Now, I hear mention on the radio and in cutscenes of a lot of real-life cities that exist in the real world, and I can kind of excuse that, Seattle or San Francisco, etc., because I don't expect Hangar 13 to come up with fictional names for all these cities. It would be really cool if they did, for like future intents and purposes. It would be nice if they had a fictional version of Las Vegas, because they could always do a future Mafia game set in Vegas. It would be perfect. But at the same time, one thing I have issue is A, they don't mention Lost Heaven, at least not once as far as I can tell. And B, they mention Chicago numerous times. How difficult is it to, scratch out Chicago Hangar 13 and replace it with Lost Heaven? That way, you have a little wink going back to the first Mafia game, and then all the Mafia fans would be like, hey, that's kind of cool. Anyone that's new to Mafia would be like, well, what's Lost Heaven? And that would make them kind of curious. And the same thing goes for Empire Bay. It gets mentioned a few times revolved around Vito, but a lot of times you're hearing about New York City and Brooklyn, and last time I checked, those are supposed to be one and the same. So they really should have done a better job when it comes to the cities in the Mafiaverse and including them a lot better. I mean, like I said, they include Empire Bay a little bit, but Lost Heaven gets completely ignored, which I think absolutely sucks. The next con is revolved around the police, the 5-0, the fuzz, one time. Now, they're not that difficult, but there are times whenever you have a wanted thing and you have a police bubble and you're about to get outside of the bubble, and just as you are, a cop car just magically appears, and all of a sudden the bubble moves over. So you've been trying to get away from the cops, and you think you're about to escape, and all of a sudden another cop car comes out of nowhere, and boom, the bubble's moved again. And I just consider that to be a kind of stacking the deck. So that's an issue I have. Another one is going to be, apostrophe, a little hyphen right here regarding clothing options. A lot of people have been complaining about that. However, despite the fact it is currently a con in the game, once again, Hangar 13 is going to come out with a free update, which will allow us some clothing options. But at the same time, I really wish they would have had clothing options to begin with. Same thing goes for the ability to store almost any car we want and customize and upgrade it. Now, another con I want to discuss revolves around the underbosses. As I mentioned, I love the underbosses, distinct characters, the whole balancing system, but a lot of times it feels like that you don't get to bond with them as much as, say, you would with Franklin, Trevor, and Michael in Grand Theft Auto 5. And I hate to throw that comparison out there, but you can just hang out with them if you want. If you're like Franklin, you want to go hang out with Michael, or if you're Trevor and you want to go hang out with Franklin, or etc., you can. You just call them up and you're like, hey, let's go hang out. Let's just goof off. Let's just go for a drive. We'll have a conversation. You learn a little bit more about the characters. You go for a drink. You go do this or do that. I wish the same thing was in the game where, Lincoln could call up Vito, Cassandra, or Burke, and they could do some other things like go to the jazz club, go get a drink, or just go for a drive and you have a little conversation between the two and they just discuss something about their lives and you learn a little bit more about Burke, Cassandra, Vito, etc. Now, another issue I kind of had with the underbosses was probably the very final mission in the game, the battle at the casino, where, Sal Marcano and Georgie have amassed what's left of their men for a final stand against Lincoln. And yes, you can call in the hit squad, but it would have been really, really cool if somewhere along the battle, maybe not the very beginning, but somewhere in the midst of the battle, you had Vito and Burke and Cassandra show up, and maybe even with their men as well, and there's this epic firefight going on, and they're each, moving and positioning, and it really does depend on what underbosses you have left at that point, because you could have all three of them like I did, you may have two left, you may have one left, but that would have been an extra thing just to have them more involved with the final epic mission in the game, where you actually have Vito showing up with his Tommy gun, and Burke with his sniper rifle, and Cassandra with some of her Haitians. It would have been really sweet if we would have had that, but unfortunately we didn't. I just kind of wish we would have had a little bit more interaction with the underbosses besides the ability to do the sit-downs and, of course, go visit them every now and then. Another con is the no even Steven ending. Now, there are multiple endings. There's Lincoln's ending where he takes over. There's a Cassandra ending, a Vito ending, and, of course, a Berkey ending. But if you did even Steven like I did, and instead of taking the throne, you decide to leave New Bordeaux, unfortunately, it randomly picks out one of the other underbosses and gives them the ending. And I think it happened with me for Cassandra because I happened to do like one weed running mission for her. And it's weird because I did all the loyalty missions, the agenda missions for Vito, and I don't know. I just wish that there would have been an even Steven ending where, you know, you had McGuire talking about, okay, well, after Lincoln left, you had this new commission in New Bordeaux consisting of Vito and Cassandra and Burke, and this is how it played out with those three, for better or worse. It'd still have been cool if we would have had an even Steven ending, but like I said, there are multiple endings to the game. Another con is, of course, no random encounters or random missions. It's just the basics, you know. Once you're done with almost everything, the main story, you can do a few of the weed runs, truck runs, moonshine runs, but there's nothing like you can, like, for example, drive down the street, you see a blip, you pull over, and you just happen to come across just some random person, and you have a conversation with them, and maybe you help them out, maybe you don't. Or whenever you take over a district and somebody's like robbing one of the stores, a bar, a jewelry store, etc., you have the ability to stop the robbery or chase them down and murder them and either bring back the money or keep it for yourself. I realize it's very similar to how it plays in Grand Theft Auto 5, but I really wish they would have had something like that in the game besides just the ability to do collectibles after the game is over, because besides that, besides doing weed running and the truck running and, of course, like I said, the moonshine running, as long as you've also done all the agenda missions, that's pretty much it after the game. I mean, you can just roam around town, I guess, and just goof off. Then the final con, I'm not going to dive too much into it because Carrick did over on his review video, and you can check that out as well, is all the bugs. The bugs, the glitches, crashes, freezes. I had a few freezes, including the infamous Gumbo freeze in episode 1. The skybox could have looked a lot better. And what I mean by skybox is, like the horizon, the sky, the clouds, etc. That could have looked a little bit better. There were times when the sun was just too damn bright. And there were some other issues as well that happened concerning that. Now, hopefully Hangar 13 is working on a lot of these issues. Maybe not all of them, but hopefully a lot of them, especially maybe the crashes and the freezes, because some of the glitches are kind of funny with floating cars and whatnot. That's just funny. That's small potatoes compared to some of the other issues. So hopefully they'll have a patch out soon enough, and that will remedy some of these problems, maybe even most of them. So that would be really good if they did. So anyways, there are my pros, there are my cons concerning Mafia 3. And now my final rating. 3.5 out of 5 bottles of bourbon. Because it's the Bourbon City. All right, so let me know what your thoughts are concerning Mafia 3. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What are some pros or cons that I did not mention that you would like to include if you had the opportunity to review Mafia 3?